dawn approaches, an OV-1 Mohawk completes a night surveillance mission over enemy territory. This aircraft, equipped for infrared photography, is assigned to the Aerial Surveillance and Target Acquisition Platoon within the Division Aviation Battalion. Specific aerial observation missions are surveillance, reconnaissance, target acquisition, or special. Mission completed, the OV-1 returns to its base, the Division Instrumented Airfield. Whatever the mission, standard procedures are provided to regulate its conduct. We will show these procedures in a simulated combat situation. The best place to start is here at operations. From this location, the platoon commander, Captain Brown, supervises the operations of his unit. A representative from the Division G2 Air, Captain Jones, is also located in the operations tent. Also in operations is an image interpreter, trained in the interpretation of aerial photos, infrared, and radar imagery. Up-to-the-minute situation and intelligence maps are maintained. Information on these maps is supplied through division intelligence channels by air crews of the unit and from other sources. Each day, these officers jointly brief air crew members to keep them abreast of tactical developments. This morning, Captain Jones gets information of enemy activity reported by an infantry patrol. This report, supplied by Division Intelligence, is noted and recorded. If additional reports are received, a search of this area might be required. Meanwhile, another but unrelated mission is completed. This aviator has observed something he believes worth reporting. He leaves the Iroquois to the co-pilot and reports to operations. Infrared imagery obtained by data link during the Mohawk mission has been processed and is checked. Interpretation of this imagery indicates heavy vehicular traffic here in the enemy sector. This is a valley in the divisional zone of responsibility. It is the same general area where the infantry patrol reported hearing sounds of vehicular traffic. There is now enough information to mark this general area on the map. It is labeled Target Valley. The Iroquois aviator brings in his observations. At 0640, he sighted 4 large enemy transport helicopters taking off from that same area. Captain Jones adds this information to the other on the G2 map. In addition, a new enemy anti-aircraft position was spotted late yesterday on a nearby hill. It is apparent that this valley needs looking into, and immediately. Captain Brown finishes with the night mission Mohawk crew, and they depart. The G2 Air initiates the request for an immediate priority mission to observe activity in this valley. Captain Brown tells the operations sergeant to have the standby crew report. The status board shows that Lieutenant Tracy, aviator, and Lieutenant Allen, observer, are available. Their mission falls within Area A1 on the Area Search Overlay. Here are Lieutenants Tracy and Allen, who will carry out the mission. The mission will involve 4 principal steps. Although all crews are given daily general briefings, a somewhat less formal pre-flight briefing is held before each mission. This is followed by planning, or the crew's preparation and flight planning before takeoff. Execution is the carrying out or actual flight phase of the mission. Finally, during debriefing, the crew reports on all aspects of the mission. All right then, first step, briefing. It is during the pre-flight briefing that the mission is defined and all matters related to it explained. Jones, the G2 Air, conducts the intelligence portion of the briefing. The crew participates in the briefing discussion. They make sure they get all the information they need. Because a thorough briefing is so vital, a briefing guide, patterned after the 5-paragraph field order, is issued to all aviators. This guide is in wallet-size form for ready reference. The changes in the tactical situation which have occurred since yesterday's general briefing are covered. The enemy forces are discussed first. Since there has been no general change, Jones concentrates his discussion on the reports he has just received. These reports point suspicion toward Target Valley as the site of a buildup of hostile forces. Tracy and Allen take notes and mark their maps, paying special attention to the enemy anti-aircraft position reported yesterday afternoon. All recent changes concerning friendly forces are covered next. To perform their job effectively, the aircrew team should have a knowledge of the day-by-day tactical developments that rivaled that of the division commander. The battle situation is as much a part of their flying environment as the terrain or weather forecast. Latest weather sequences and predictions indicate satisfactory ceiling and visibility conditions for the next few hours. Next comes the statement of the mission. This includes the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Lieutenants Allen and Tracy are the who of the mission. The what of the mission is visual and photographic observations of the suspected enemy position. The when of the mission is now. Take off as soon after 0730 as possible. The where of the mission is from the division instrumented airfield to the valley and return. The why of the mission is to check on a suspected enemy concentration to gain a more complete intelligence picture. The how of the mission is by flying over the area, visually observing and taking photographs. This concludes the intelligence portion of the briefing. Tracy and Allen finalize their notes and prepare for the next phase of the briefing. Execution falls under the aviation or operational portion of the briefing. This is conducted by the platoon commander, Captain Brown. The plan of the operation refers to the commander's concept as set forth in previous orders and directives. Captain Brown emphasizes making full use of the concealing features of the terrain and the speed of the aircraft out to the area, minimum time over the target to avoid enemy fire, and return. Coordination is necessary to tie the mission into the overall division plan and avoid conflict, duplication, and confusion. On the flight planning map, Captain Brown reviews some important elements of coordination. He locates the points which division directives have designated for exiting and entering the FIBA. Additional checkpoints are assigned on either side of the target over which the crew will report during the flight. Alternate airfields are reviewed. Artillery reference lines are checked to make sure they correspond with those on the crew maps. A pickup point has been established where downed crews should rendezvous for regularly scheduled rescue efforts. Through coordination, the mission of Lieutenants Tracy and Allen is interlocked with the larger mission of the division which it supports. The fourth heading does not apply to this mission, but would be important to one where fuel requirements, maintenance plans, rations, and so forth were involved. Command and signal. Tracy must know who has command authority to change the objective during flight. Under signal matters, the crew is briefed on the all-important radio frequencies, codes, and call signs they will use during the flight. For security reasons, only pertinent information is extracted from the SOI. Since command and signal is the last item on the guide, briefing officers and crew alike will recheck to ensure no pertinent information has been overlooked. This completes the first step of the mission, pre-flight briefing. Based on the requirements that have been established during the briefing, the crew now begins the planning of the mission. Since the flight will be at low level, terrain evaluation is a vital aspect of pre-flight planning. Working from selected maps and aerial photographs, and calling upon their experience from previous flights, the crew analyzes the terrain to select a flight path, affording maximum concealment and surprise. On all such flights, locations of known enemy concentration should be avoided. This includes terrain features such as high ground positions and major intersections likely to be heavily defended. After takeoff, they will fly down this ravine at low level to avoid a chance sighting by the enemy that might disclose the airfield position. Then they will turn left and cross the FIBA at the checkpoint. Across the river, they will skirt this large open expanse and follow this stream bed out toward the target. At the end of the stream bed, they will fly around the area where an anti-aircraft position has been reported. Then make their pass over the target valley by flying along the southeastern ridgeline. They will then head back along this steep wooded slope, cross the FIBA, and return to the airfield. As observer, Lieutenant Allen must know the flight route. This should not be a long flight, about 30 minutes from takeoff to landing. He will also prepare a checklist of all his tasks and navigational aids during the flight. Lieutenant Tracy prepares and submits his flight plan to the operations sergeant. The planning nears completion and takeoff time approaches. The flight plan is called in to the nearest Flight Coordination Center or direct to the Corps Flight Operations Center, whichever is closer. The center will alert other units involved as to the time and route of the mission, particularly the Army Air Defense Forces, through coordination with the AADCP. The final phase of the pre-flight planning is a check of the equipment, including the maps, photos, and papers to be carried on the flight. The crew chief has the aircraft ready. However, the pilot and observer will conduct a pre-flight inspection of the aircraft and special devices, such as the aerial camera, which will be used during the flight. Lieutenants Tracy and Allen will also take aboard the aircraft that which is not visible here, their skills and knowledge. The success of the mission depends ultimately on the ability of the crew. The third step, execution of the mission. Whether the mission comes up jackpot or lemons depends on how well the first two steps, briefing and planning, were conducted. Lieutenant Tracy keeps the plane low over the terrain as planned. Throughout the flight, the crew will be alert and watchful. Here, one of our units in the reserve area has spread out their laundry in an obvious breach of camouflage discipline. Allen notes this fact to be reported later. This sort of observation is also part of the crew's responsibility. While recording, he keeps a continuing check on their position. Time for a change in course. Allen spots the hill he had selected as a guidepost and gives Tracy the new heading. Allen reports crossing the FIBA at the checkpoint. They avoid the open area ahead and take the stream bed as planned. This low-level approach minimizes the chance of enemy radar interception. It does not, however, prevent the sighting of our plane by a hostile aircraft. Tracy keeps the plane at minimum altitude and uses terrain features for protection during evasive maneuvers. The enemy aircraft loses contact. At low level, the Mohawk generally has the advantage of maneuverability over a higher speed aircraft. Thrown off the planned route by the attack, our crew must recover rapidly and replot their course. Tracy and Allen reorient themselves by the terrain features. Allen reports back on the enemy aircraft and the necessary change in their flight path. A small bridge is identified and a new route to the target is selected. Navigation at this altitude requires highly developed techniques of observation as well as split-second reactions. Dead ahead now, the target valley. Allen prepares to turn on the camera and also search the valley visually. They fly along the ridge line, looking into the valley with the sun behind them. The area appears to be deserted. Then a reflection is spotted, perhaps windshield flashes from enemy vehicles. Although little has been seen, the reflections may be a clue worth following up. Tracy decides to try another pass at the valley, this time from the opposite direction. With the camera turned on again, they go in for a second look. They burst into an enemy assembly area, confirming the necessity of the flight. Allen records all he can see, and they are gone before the enemy can react. As Allen stops the camera, he continues to record the progress of the flight. So far, so good. They know they have valuable information to report. They take the planned route home, the steep wooded terrain, selected because it is unlikely to be covered in force by the enemy. On the return flight, there is no relaxing of vigilance. Enemy troop movement or artillery positions might well be spotted when least expected. The FIBA is recrossed at the designated point as the mission nears completion. Captain Brown, the platoon commander, knows Tracy and Allen are due back. And right on schedule, the aircraft approaches the field. A lightning-like thrust out to the target and back, flown at low level to take advantage of the terrain, to stay beneath enemy radar patterns, and to present as little a target as possible to hostile fire. The entire flight has taken little more than 30 minutes. Even before the aircraft is parked, the operations sergeant has a team ready to take the exposed film from the aerial camera to a mobile processing laboratory located near operations. Film processing will start immediately. Image interpretation will corroborate and further define the nature and extent of the targets observed by the crew. Captain Brown alerts Captain Jones of the return of the Mohawk. The third phase execution is complete. The crew and crew chief check the aircraft for any damage sustained during the flight. Tracy indicates to the crew chief any flight discrepancies noted and recorded in the aircraft log. Gathering their maps and mission records, Tracy and Allen head for the operations tent for the fourth and final phase of the mission, debriefing. This session normally is conducted by the same personnel who briefed the mission. The aviator observer team is questioned concerning all aspects of the mission. They are debriefed separately so that independent versions of the mission can be obtained without one report influencing the other. Debriefing forms are filled out with the observer's notes as the principal source of information. Before the debriefing is completed, the aerial photographs taken are delivered. They confirm the visual observations of the crew and supply additional detail to the trained eye of the image interpreter. This information will also be included in the mission report. As a final check, Tracy and Allen compare debriefing notes, and the mission is successfully concluded. It is successful because each of the four steps, briefing, planning, execution, and debriefing through proper teamwork were accurate and complete. A little more than an hour and a half after a valley first came under suspicion, confirmed information on an enemy buildup is available. This information, as a part of the Division intelligence effort, is immediately forwarded to Division G2. Aerial observation, when conducted by a well-trained team, acts as the eyes of the commander over the battlefield. It contributes importantly to the gathering of intelligence information and to the overall success of any military operation.